very special friend who died about 3 years ago.
A little over 2 years ago, a friend of mine who I had known for 14 years came back to town HIV positive. Prior to that, I had never known anybody who had any fatal illnesses.
I had worked with people who are HIV positive and people with AIDS in New York City and Miami for 3 years. And I was touched in many ways by the people that I had met, and I became friends with many of them.
And you go to visit people, you go to see them and see how miserable they are, and you think, if there's something I can do. I can't help those people, but maybe I can help the children.
And I was thinking about how the polio vaccine was developed and how the volunteers might have felt being in that study, and thought, well, this would be maybe a landmark study to be involved with.
I feel that this is a unique way to contribute to the eradication of AIDS. I really don't think anything could be greater than that.
The goal of the vaccine program is to develop a new type of vaccine that can be given to prevent infection with HIV, the virus that causes AIDS.
Arnell, my name is Gary Filmore, and I'd like to thank you for being able to come into the Vaccine Center today. Basically, what we're going to do is talk about a particular study that we're interested in having you participate in.
The studies we're doing right now are designed to answer the questions, one, are the vaccines safe? And two, do they stimulate antibodies in the bloodstream that can attack and kill the virus?
The vaccine is in the research stages. We learn something new every day. And so we take that information and we apply it to another vaccine that we're going to develop in the future. So that's what we're looking for, is a safe, effective vaccine that can be used by anyone.
It's going to take years and hundreds of volunteers coming forward to develop the final AIDS vaccine. You guys been busy today, Sharon?
Oh, yeah. Seen several today.
This is my 3-month blood draw. I became a volunteer because I wanted to demonstrate to the community that I was committed for the long term.
What really motivated me to volunteer, I can recall 2 specific things. One, a favorite cousin of mine died from AIDS a couple of years ago, and it was, of course, very sad. And 2, I had to have minor surgery. And while I was in the hospital, I found out that I had to have a blood transfusion because I was very, very anemic. And when that happened, I was absolutely petrified and wondering, oh my God, what's going to happen to me? They've given me this blood. And knowing that, just not wanting anyone else to experience that type of fear. You can say you're serving mankind or simply you're doing the right thing, but it is a right thing to do.
From about 18 years old to 22, 23, I was living very recklessly. I was a musician who was constantly, involved with stuff all the time. Knowing that I had friends die from that, and I thought, this is my way, since I'm a survivor, I think I should give back through my participation in the study. And in that way, it was kind of not undoing anything, but it was kind of balancing the scales, maybe in my mind, in my heart somewhere, to kind of rectify what had been done. And I felt good about that. I think the first thing we need to do is we just want to set these fence pieces together.
As part of the pre-study period, they told us they were going to test us and see if we were already HIV positive. And for me, that was one of the things I had to really think about, because we had never been tested for HIV. And then what would we do with the information if one of us did test positive? How would that impact our marriage? And we did talk about that, and when we found out we weren't, I was really thankful and even more eager then to be in the study.
Can you look on the bottle and mark it down there? I'd been working at the AIDS vaccine evaluation unit for about 2 months when a new study opened up, and I decided that I wanted to volunteer for that study. I did a little bit of research into what that specific vaccine, how it was made, what it was all about, the possible side effects. All those issues I had to take into consideration, and I also had to build up trust in what I was doing. I had to build up trust in the research that was done. It was also an important decision for my fiance, Craig. He was very concerned about what these vaccine studies and what they had meant, and so I took the literature home to him, and he looked it over. He wanted to speak to a physician. He wanted to learn more about it. We sat down and we discussed it. We went through the paperwork, and it did take some time for us to decide whether I actually wanted to participate in this study or not. But then I decided that this is something that I wanted to do, and I did do it. It's a good feeling to be a part of something like this that's going to be possibly the future of the death of this virus.
Today we're going to go over 4 basic points, and when you leave here, you will be able to tell me what HIV is, what AIDS is. I've been involved with HIV/AIDS awareness and education for a little over 2 years. I've been a volunteer with HIV/AIDS research for a little over a year and a half. Volunteering for the vaccine itself is my little contribution to mankind. I figured I have been lucky enough not to be exposed to the HIV virus, and somebody has to be there to help in the research. And if I don't do it, who will? If I don't do it now, when will it get done? And that was the major motivation for me to get involved with HIV/AIDS research. My main question, needless to say, about exposing myself to an HIV, a possible HIV vaccine, was exposing myself to HIV. I figured I didn't want to get into a study where I was going to walk away from it HIV positive.
One of the questions I'm very often asked is, can I get AIDS from the vaccine? And the answer is no. You cannot get AIDS from the vaccines. These vaccines are all synthetic products. That is, they're made in the laboratory. They mimic HIV, the virus that causes AIDS, but they are not HIV. They're not made from HIV.
So that it's made to be a look-alike of the virus, not the actual virus, whole, dead, live, weakened, or anything like that. And then it's given to you to trick your body to react as if it had an HIV infection.
When you're measuring the effectiveness of the vaccine, we are not looking for the number of people who actually contract HIV. The way that we determine whether a vaccine is working effectively is by taking blood tests.
We draw blood from the volunteers, take that blood to the laboratory, and test it to see if the blood can attack and kill HIV in the laboratory. We do not want anybody to think these vaccines work and prevent AIDS at this stage, because we simply don't know.
What you're doing is making a commitment of time and of course yourself for about 18 months or 2 years.
To get the additional information, I called and I made an appointment, and I went in, and one of the nurses explained to me very thoroughly what the vaccine trial would entail. And they gave me a lot of literature to read and made absolutely certain I understood what would be happening.
They drew pictures for me, and I saw what the AIDS virus looks like, and so I know what it is that I could possibly be getting injected with, and I know it's not the AIDS virus, and I know I'm not going to get AIDS from being injected with the HIV vaccine.
They had us take the consent form home and read it and talk about it and really consider it without having to say yes at that time, because they wanted to make sure we weren't pressured in any way, that it was totally voluntary, and that we had considered all the options and had a chance to talk about it with each other, with our private physician if we wanted to, before we committed to being in the study.
When you start participating, you're given a schedule for all of your visits. You know exactly when you'll come in, you set up your appointment times, and you know the days when you will receive the vaccine. You're given a thermometer and a log because you have to keep track of your temperature.
Relax as much as you can.
I had soreness at the site of the injection for about a day, the way I would with any sort of injection, and a very, limited temperature elevation.
That should beep while I'm taking your blood pressure. You go ahead and take it out.
In volunteering, you end up acquiring a relationship with the staff people, and they're all very friendly, very warm, and very, very funny. They joke around a lot.
The person I see the most is Theresa. When I go in, we talk and we laugh and we joke, and she's real familiar with me and my medications and my veins and everything like that.
It's very important to have a good, close relationship to people who are sticking you with needles. You do want to stay on their good side.
And so when I go to have my blood drawn, I feel like a baby sometimes. In fact, the nurses say that the babies are better than I am because I'll hold my breath or I'll, say ow. But usually it's just the sticking of the needle, and that's it. And then I can watch the blood going in the tube.
You may have a blood draw, or you may have an injection, and they fix you up, and you're done. It just really doesn't take that much time.
Every few weeks or so, they withdraw blood and they analyze it, and then I get another injection. And that's gone on now for about 1.5 years.
Our volunteers are monitored consistently through the entire study for effects on the immune system, perhaps on the kidneys, on the liver, where the vaccine may be processed. We continually run those tests throughout the study to make sure that people continue to stay healthy. These tests and these vaccines are at a young stage. These vaccines have only been around for about 5 years or so. Only time will tell exactly what the side effects are going to be in the future. So far, we do not see any problems. But again, 5, 10, 15 years from now, we will have more information.
The only reactions we've seen have been mild, local reactions, a little bit of pain, a little bit of swelling, the typical things that you would see after any sort of injection. The social consequences of participating in these studies, it can be significant. For example, after receiving some of the vaccines, you might test positive on the routine blood test for HIV, so that volunteers may be incorrectly identified as being HIV infected. Now, we have confirming blood tests which can easily separate HIV infection from antibodies caused from the vaccines.
But that does make an issue in the meantime for insurance, sometimes for younger people in relationships, military service, foreign travel, and things of that sort.
Well, I was concerned about the false positive HIV status. And then I realized that we have an identification card. And on that identification card is our photograph, our signature on it, and also a special identification number and a 1-800 number to the National Institutes of Health. Also on the back of that card is a 24-hour beeper number that one of the nurses here at the vaccine center is accessible.
And there were also theoretical risk with obtaining insurance. But after being in the study, I applied for some health insurance from a nationally known company who's known to be very conservative, and told them about my involvement in the study and showed them my ID card, and there was no problem.
I told this one friend of mine that I was participating in this research study. She was quite upset because she mentioned the Tuskegee syphilis experiments, and she simply said, you don't know what these people are giving you.
Each study is approved by a group called the Institutional Review Board. This is a group set up at each individual university that must approve every particular study done with volunteers.
As a research nurse at this university, I know that the detailed process that each department has to go through with our research board to get a research project approved. And I know that the people on this board are very, very cautious with the type of research that is approved and done and given the support by the university. And so because of that, I was very trusting.
We have within each university a community advisory board of representatives from our cities to help us, to advise us on how best to meet the needs of the community with this program.
I think we have to face the issue that people out there do look at the radiation experiments, they do look at the Tuskegee experiment, they do look at other cases in which this government lied to its citizens.
So often we get in these settings and we think we have to be the creator of the procedure, when in fact those who are most affected by the procedure could give us tremendous insight.
You know, if this had been with the government, the nebulous government that you can't see and touch, well, who knows what would have been happening. But first of all, it's within a university, the medical wing of the university. It's a department that my wife knows a lot of the people in. There were little things like that all the little things together gave an environment of security and safety and reassurance on my part.
You know, I would be very leery at volunteering for something that I wasn't fully informed about, but since I was so well informed about this study to the point where when they give you all this information, you have to sign to verify that you do understand what is being done and how it's going to, you know, how you're going to participate.
David, you're aware that this is a phase 1 trial to look at an HIV vaccine?
The informed consent tells who's doing the study, why they're doing the study, who's sponsoring it, what kind of results are they looking for, what is their liability to you, what are the side effect issues, how much blood is drawn, etc., etc., etc. And this is very important because you can talk about it with your spouse, your siblings, your priest, your doctor, your insurance man, whoever might be important for you in terms of making this decision, because we want you to be comfortable with it.
One of the things about being a volunteer in the study is that it is purely voluntary. And there's always the option to say no. Even once you become a volunteer, if anything is, if you have any doubt after becoming a volunteer, you can always say no and drop out.
And also, as a part of this process, we guarantee you absolute confidentiality. Unless you make a decision on your own that you want to publicize your involvement with this or let what other kind of persons know, no information about you directly transmit through that chart. We want you to be a partner in this. We want you to feel that you are as informed about what happens as anyone else. We encourage you to call us at any time if you have questions, write them down if you have trouble remembering it, and you know, we're willing to go the extra mile to make sure that you understand.
Volunteers need to know their contribution is critically important to this whole effort. That without their participation, we can't be successful. We can't make an AIDS vaccine without a lot of volunteers participating. It's important to get a broad cross-section of volunteers, persons of different sex, persons from different races, to participate in these studies so that we can make sure that everybody responds in the same way to these vaccines.
When there is this vaccine, I want it to work for my children. I want it to work for my siblings just as much as anybody else in this country would want it to do. And it can't do that if I'm not going to participate in the process. And that's all we're asking people to do, is to look into it as one of the options.
I think the most important thing about being a volunteer is that you're participating in something that's a part of our time, our age, our society, our world right now.
I feel like the fact that they're continuing it means that there's some hope. And so I feel proud, in a way, to be part of the study.
This isn't the type of thing where you feel you can pin a badge on your chest and walk around saying, I helped develop this vaccine. It has to be something that you could be content with in yourself in more of a small way, you know, knowing that I did this.
I know that if I may not be out there actively working in AIDS service organizations, or I may not be out there marching or taking care of someone with HIV, but I'm doing my own little part. I'm doing what I can do here and now to put an end to this disease.
The decision to volunteer is a strictly personal decision, and there's nothing I would say to convince somebody else that they should volunteer. That's something that you have to think about for yourself. If they asked me if I thought it was a positive experience, I would say yes, it definitely was positive.